Welcome back to Real Family Secrets. Grab your snacks, get comfortable. The people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. My name is Walter Hensley. I gave my son and Yvo fiancé $180,000 for their first home. They told me it was a gift. Then I found out the title company handling the closing belonged to her brother, and my money had been turned into something I could lose without ever knowing it. I built an HVAC business in Central Texas over 35 years. I started with one truck, one borrowed ladder, and a phone number painted on the side of a van I could barely afford. By the time I retired, I had sold the company, paid off my home, and put aside enough that my wife Margaret and I could help our son Derek when it mattered. We had one child. Every decision we made after selling the business was built around the idea that someday Derek would have a stronger start than I did. So when Derek called and told us he and his fiancée Priya had found a house in Oakwood, I was genuinely happy for them. It was a clean, modern place with a small yard, a broad kitchen window, and enough space for the family they said they wanted to build. The down payment is the only thing holding us back, Derek said. The lender says we qualify if we can close the gap. Margaret and I talked about it for one evening. The next morning, I told him we would contribute $180,000. It's a gift, I said. You don't owe us anything. Just build a good life in it. Derek hugged me. Priya cried. Margaret cried too, because she has always cried at moments that look like family becoming larger. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 weeks after the closing. Derek brought over a folder of documents because he wanted me to see how everything worked. I had spent most of my life reading contracts, vendor agreements, equipment leases, property documents, insurance schedules. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew when someone had used too many complicated words to explain something that should have been simple. One page described my $180,000 contribution as a subordinate private obligation. Another referred to a secondary security interest. There was no clear repayment date, no stated interest rate, no direct acknowledgement that the money had been intended as a gift. I asked Derek about it over lunch a few days later. Why is my gift described as a private obligation? I asked. Derek didn't flinch. Dad, that's just structuring. Priya's credit is stronger right now, so the house is in her name for tax optimization and liability shielding. The lender needs your contribution categorized this way for underwriting. And the title company? Priya knows people there. They gave us a better rate. It's all standard. He smiled while saying it. Not warmly, not nervously. The way he used to smile as a teenager when he had already decided I was going to believe him. That makes sense, I said. Thank you for explaining it. I paid for lunch. Then I went home and called a real estate attorney. No one hins gnome. Her name was Deborah Okafor. She listened without interrupting while I explained the contribution, the property title, the documents, and the way Derek had described the arrangement. I emailed the folder while she was on the phone. 11 minutes later, she called back. Mr. Hensley, she said, I need to be precise. This document does not protect your gift. It does the opposite. I sat down at my desk. You are listed behind the primary lender and behind an additional private lender, she continued. There is no clear repayment schedule, no clearly defined enforcement mechanism, and your son's name is not on the deed. If the property is sold, refinanced, or foreclosed, your ability to recover anything could be extremely limited. So they took my gift and made it into a loan I may never see again. That is the practical risk, Deborah said. And I would strongly recommend you find out who drafted it. I looked at the header on the closing documents. The title company was called Getty and a Conquo Title Services. Getty. Priya had mentioned a business partner named Alan Getty more than once. She said he helped with bridge financing. The next morning, I drove to the title company's office. I told the receptionist I was considering purchasing a rental property and wanted general information about closings. A young employee named Casey brought up the firm's profile on a screen. He was polite, eager, and careless enough to angle the monitor in my direction while explaining their services. On the company page under Founders were two names, Alan Getty and Priya Okonkwo. I thanked Casey. I walked back to my truck. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine for almost 20 minutes. Priya's business partner was her brother. The company that had structured my $180,000 contribution was owned by the woman buying the house and the man supposedly providing independent financing. And Derek knew enough to repeat the words they'd given him: tax optimization, liability shielding, standard structuring, without ever telling me who stood to benefit. I could have called him from that parking lot. I could have screamed. I could have driven to the house and demanded every document they had. But 35 years in business had taught me something simple. When someone has built a structure around a lie, you don't kick at the front door. You learn where the beams are. Befolam you load 'em, Weston. That evening, I told Margaret everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she got up, filled 2 mugs with coffee, put one in front of me, and said 4 words I will never forget. Then let's be smart. Nafataman. Deborah connected us with a forensic accountant named Diane Sloan, a former financial crimes analyst who now reviewed suspicious property transactions. We asked her not to assume a crime. We asked her to do exactly what I had spent my own career doing: follow the documents, reconcile the numbers, and identify who benefited from each decision. Diane spent 16 days reviewing public filings, loan records, property transfers, title documents, and business registrations. Her report found at least 11 other transactions over the previous 3 years involving Getty and Okonkwo Title Services. In each one, a parent or relative had provided money described privately as a gift or family help. In several cases, the closing paperwork recast that money as a weak secondary obligation behind more favorable private financing connected to people with business ties to the buyers. The arrangements were not identical, but the pattern was hard to ignore. Some family members had no obvious protection if the house was sold. Some had been told their funds were secured. Others had never been told the title was held solely in one partner's name. Diane's conclusion was careful, because careful is what good professionals are. She did not call it fraud. She called it a repeated pattern of undisclosed conflicts and misleading representations that required immediate legal review. Deborah filed a formal complaint with the state regulator and sent Priya, Alan, and Derek a demand letter. The demand was simple. Either my $180,000 would be repaid, or an independent closing attorney would record a properly documented security interest with clear terms, full disclosure, and no relationship to Getty and Okonkwo Title Services. They had 30 days to respond. Derek called within an hour of receiving the letter. "Dad, what did you do?" he demanded. "You reported Priya's brother? You could destroy their business." I asked for an independent professional to explain why my gift became a loan with no protection, I said. "Your fiancée's family business handled the closing. Her brother supplied financing. You told me it was normal. Now an attorney and an accountant are telling me it wasn't transparent." "Wanaimu, you don't understand how complicated these transactions are." "No, Derek. I understand exactly how complicated people make things when they don't want the person paying for them to understand." There was silence on the line. "I didn't know all the details," he finally said. "You knew enough to laugh at me for asking." He stopped breathing for a second. "Yes," I said, "I heard you." 2 nights after that lunch, I had driven past the Oakwood house. The string lights from their housewarming party were still hanging over the patio. I parked 2 streets away and stood behind the wooden fence at the edge of the yard. Through the kitchen window, I saw Derek and Priya at the island, drinks in their hands, laughing. Priya said, "Your dad literally thanked you for explaining it." Alan made it so, even if we sell the house, his money evaporates unless we decide to pay him back. Derek laughed. He built an entire company and still can't read a title report. It's kind of sad. I stood in the dark for a long time. I didn't record them. I didn't need to. Their words were not the strongest evidence I had, but they were the moment I stopped wondering whether I was overreacting. The regulatory investigation took months. During that time, 3 other families came forward after recognizing aspects of their own transactions in the documents the investigators requested. Priya and Alan eventually agreed to a civil settlement without admitting wrongdoing. My money was converted into a properly documented lien with a defined repayment schedule and an independent escrow agent overseeing the process. Derek's name was added to the ownership structure only after separate legal review. The house no longer existed on paperwork designed entirely around Priya's control. Getty and Econquo Title Services closed its doors less than a year later. I won't pretend that gave me joy. Alan lost a business. Priya lost the reputation she had built around it. Derek lost the easy life he thought he had secured, and I lost something too. I lost the uncomplicated belief that my son would never see me as a person he could outsmart. Derek came to our house 6 months after the settlement. He stood on the porch with no folder, no prepared explanation, no complicated language. I was embarrassed, he said. I knew Priya and Alan were making it complicated. I let them convince me it was harmless because I wanted the house. Then I let myself believe you were too old to notice. I'm not angry because you wanted help, I said. I'm angry because you took help and tried to turn it into a trap. He cried. I did not. I told him he could come back when he was ready to have a relationship built on truth instead of requests. I told him I loved him. I also told him love doesn't require me to make myself easy to exploit. Margaret and I are still learning what family looks like now. We see Derek occasionally. Priya rarely comes. The space between us is not healed, but at least it is honest. And I keep a copy of that first closing document in my office. Not because I enjoy remembering it, because it reminds me that trust is not a substitute for clarity, even when the person asking for trust is your own child. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real family stories and tell us in the comments, would you have reported the title company or kept the conflict inside the family?
City hum buzzing through the tent, skyline cracked open. Engine shakes like it's holding secrets I ain't told ya. I've been flowing through the night like my past got teeth. Chrome lights blinking on the dash, heartbeat underneath. Shadows moving in the corners like they know my sins. And the wind in the window talking like an old friend. Late calls ringing but I mute them on instinct. Tryna outrun ghosts that learn my rhythm quick. Gold chain swinging like a pendulum of fate. Every mile I drive's another debt I can't pay straight. Neon bleeds down the block, painting over my thoughts. Every step I take feels pulled by something lost. Pose lagging off beat, chasing something slow. Can't tell if I'm running from truth or just letting it grow. I've been riding through the dark with the fear on my back, telling every old wound it ain't welcome like that. Stars drive low like they wanna see me fall, but I burn too hard to ever do what I'm told. Yeah, I burn too hard. Yeah, I burn too hard. I smell smoke in the leather, maybe past lives calling. My vision blurred the edges like the night keeps falling. Your voice echoes in my head like a dream half sunk. Sweet venom in the syllables, love stab drunk. Ain't no map to climb out of who I become. City bends around me like I'm chasing the sun. No brakes in my pulse just to climb climb through the static, trying to tame the storm inside, but the storm too addicting. Neon bleeds down the block, painting over my thoughts. Every step I take feels pulled by something lost. Pause lagging off, chasing something slow. Can't tell if I'm running from truth or just letting it grow. I've been riding through the dark with the fear on my back, telling every old wound it ain't welcome like that. Stars drop low like they wanna see me fall, but I burn too hot to ever do what I'm told. Yeah, I burn too hot. Yeah, I burn too hot. One breath, two thoughts. The world folds in like a curtain of smoke. Stay awake, I whisper to a version of me that ain't survived every story I wrote. I've been riding through the dark with the fear on my back, telling every old wound it ain't welcome like that. Stars drop low like they wanna see me fall, but I burn too hot to ever do what I'm told. Yeah, I burn